Good afternoon. I'm very glad we had a break before my presentation because I figured otherwise everyone would be asleep. So I am honored to be here today with you and I'm going to share with you a few of my ideas. Much of what Chris shared with you earlier, I agree with. I spent 25 years with Marriott International and started as a part-time van driver in my very first job right out of high school and became country manager for Thailand. I retired after 25 years of service, not because I didn't like Marriott, but because I saw a different direction. I really enjoy Southeast Asia. I don't have a desire to, I don't have global ambitions. My goal is to work within Southeast Asia. Today we have hotels in Thailand, Malaysia, and Vietnam. We have 18 hotels under contract and about 3,000 keys. So we're not as big as my friend over here, but my goal in leaving a big brand was that I wanted to set up a company where I could be good. My goal is not to be big. If we get big and we're still good, then that's okay. But the goal is to find a niche, which is maybe a little different than the way I spent my first 25 years. My understanding in Asia, the fundamental difference is we are dealing with families. In North America and Europe, we're dealing with big insurance companies. Here, I understand and appreciate the difference in Asia for the 21 years I've been here, in that we are dealing with families, and that these investments that you all are making is very important. And we have to deal with the family dynamic, and that's not always easy. But today, I want to just take a few minutes and share with you a little bit of what we're doing. And it's not so much about my brands, but it's about how do you, as a developer or a hotel owner, try to make the right decisions that will create a better guest experience. There are a lot of standardized functions today that go on that help create a great guest experience. But I'm a big believer that if we get the design right, and if we get the operational efficiency right, we can deliver a much better guest experience. And that's really what I want to talk to you about a little bit today. As we look at the words boutique and design, those are greatly misused in our industry. But I do believe, as you see some of the themes today that I want to talk about and share with you, hopefully that resonates with what's important to you in your property or potential development that you're interested in working on. I'm going to talk about the Holy Trinity. And this is not about the Catholic Church and the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. The Holy Trinity is often referred to in food. And I think often, I grew up in America, I have French background. Cajun food, the core ingredients of Cajun food is always celery, onion, and green pepper. And the celery by itself isn't very good. The onion by itself isn't very good. But when you combine those three things together, you create the core ingredients in Cajun cooking. Coming to Asia, I found great excitement. My love for chili, my love for ginger, things that are spicy and sweet and hot together. And when you look at that, one by itself is no good. And I'm going to talk today about the combination of a couple different things. But the Holy Trinity of food and the Holy Trinity of Asian food is really important. And I think it hopefully brings through the idea that great design without great operations is no good. We've got to have it all, and we've got to find the right balance. Today I'm going to talk about these three things. I want to talk about creative design, I want to talk about services that lead to great guest expectations, and I want to talk about branding and how we use branding. Maybe it's a big brand, maybe it's a small brand. I agree with Chris very strongly, you need to find a partner you can work with. It's not necessarily about the brand, but it's about the people. And I think the issue with the people is, who are you dealing with? Who are you signing that contract with? Who are you going to deal with in 2 years? Who are you going to deal with in 5 years? Who are you going to deal with in 10 years? And I think that's part of my goal in a smaller company, in that if you sign a deal today with a vision, you better like me, because I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to get promoted, I'm not going to get sent to another region. Southeast Asia is my home, and this is where my family and I live, and I think that's really critical. We talk about creative design, I think there's three key components that are really critical. If what you're doing does not meet these three tests, I think you're wasting your time. Products have to be alluring. They have to be authentic, and they need to be experiential. And when I say experiential, I'm talking about the guest experience. If you're going to come into a hotel and you're going to go to the opium den, it better look and feel like an opium den. Don't just use a name that sounds good, but make sure that it really works and there's an experience. Most people today probably don't experience opium, but there's a story and there's a history that I think is really important. And I think to use that in a bar has been a lot of fun. It's very experiential, very authentic, and it's very alluring. This specific hotel in Phuket is off the lobby, and generally lobby bars don't get much business. This bar has become busier than our restaurant because it is so experiential, because it's got a great feeling, it's warm, it's alluring. And I think from a design standpoint, we tend to want to make things big to satisfy all of our guests. And then we have these big restaurants and big bars that are a lot of times empty. And I think by making things smaller, making things cozier, it makes it much warmer, and that design is really critical. We often get overwhelmed by the number of rooms and the number of guests, and think we have to build something to accommodate all those people. But we know, when I travel, I don't rarely eat dinner in the hotel that I'm staying in. I want to go out and experience the community. And I think we should recognize that when we're building hotels and not try to build 100 restaurants, not try to build facilities that are not necessarily going to get used. The creative design, if we're not taking advantage of rooftops that give us our great views, this is an example of a guest room. I'm staying here in I'm guessing a 45 or 50 square meter room. This room right here is a 35, 36 square meter room. And I will tell you, when we toured people through from the tour and travel industry, people felt that this room was as big as the room that I'm staying in here. And by breaking down some of the traditional barriers and hard bathroom walls and different things that have become so standard, you can still give people privacy. You can have glazed glass, you can have curtains that open and close. Some people need a lot of privacy, some people need no privacy. But if you could design a room that will give you both, that's the perfect solution. And then you can cater to all kinds of different people from around the world. This is our hotel in Saigon, really taking advantage of the community. We've got a gorgeous old school called Marie Curie School. And the windows in the lobby bar area, we really felt that it was critical to make sure that we brought in the view of the school. We've spent about $20,000 or $25,000 to help the school upgrade their appearance. We want to be a good neighbor. Selfishly, sure, I want to make sure my view out is good. It's a beautiful old French colonial building, but it had some tin roofs, it had no landscaping. Now from our lobby we look out and there's gorgeous clay tile roofs, there's beautiful planting, everything's got a fresh coat of paint. It looks really spectacular. So not only are we building a great hotel, but we're being a good neighbor. And we're going to help those kids get integrated into the hospitality program so we can help teach them as well about our industry. The services, when I first came to Asia, it was pretty exciting. Things were really stepped up here. In America, things were pretty bland. And that's part of the reason why I left. I wanted to get into better luxury 5-star style services and cold towels and drinks and cars, all those things that are really commonplace here. Don't exist in a lot of Europe and America. And I also think that's part of the issue when we talk about branding. One of the challenges is that you have a standard of a brand in one country, and then you try to introduce it to another country. Many of the big brands have brought their American brands to Europe, to Asia, and then supersize it because the standard's higher here. So if I'm an Asian customer, I have this great experience in Asia, and then I go back to Europe and America and say, well, what's this? You know, this courtyard I stayed in Bangkok is amazing. And then I go to the typical courtyard in America and say, hey, this is pretty average. So the consistency in the brand is part of what drives me to want to work within just Southeast Asia, because I can get that pretty consistent. And if somebody stays in one of my brands in Southeast Asia, whether it's Thailand or Malaysia or Vietnam or Cambodia, they're going to get a great deal of consistency. And I think that's really critical. The services, you know, when we look at things, you know, a family room with bunk beds and toys and stuffed animals, this little stuffed animal, hardly a family comes in where that stuffed animal is not traveling around with that kid. We clean these, you know, now on a daily basis. It's sort of like the bed sheets, but it gets used. And you see things often that we put in hotels, but they don't get used. And if you've got something and you see people embracing them and using them, that makes me really excited, because that means we're touching the base of what the customer is really looking at. When we look at services and we look at the guest experience, this is our new hotel that's going to open next year in Saigon. And one of the criticisms I've always had as a hotel guy is we've got these beautiful ballrooms, and often you have a small pre-function space. Sofitel here got that right. They've got a very nice pre-function space. In Saigon, there's a lot of beautiful ballrooms with pre-function spaces that are generally about 20% the size of the ballroom. When we did this design work, we made sure that the pre-function space was as big as the ballroom. And I believe that's going to be our niche. When we look at the Park Hyatt, who's the market leader in Saigon, I know that there's not a function at the Park Hyatt right now that I can't do a better job. And that means that's good market intelligence, it's good market research, but that was something we had to figure out before we gave the brief to our designers. And then the designers were able to go ahead and do what they know how to do really well, but with our guidance that is market driven. That somehow always seems to get missed. We continue to just do the same thing all the time. If the last 3 hotels did that, then that must be good enough for me. And I think you have to break the mold and say, how do we do something different? Not to be different, but to make sure that you're really hitting the niche in the market. I think that's absolutely critical. The space on our executive level with traditional seating for breakfast and casual seating for, you know, breakfast areas. We've got a secret garden on the rooftop that really provides people with some very cozy environments. Executive levels are where people should be doing business, where people want to have privacy, but often they're wide open, and you don't have a sense of any privacy. Here, we've created that sense of privacy in our rooftop experience so we can provide the breakfast experience that executive level customers come to expect, but then most importantly, we can create something different and not have to charge any more for that. But it goes back to thoughtful design. It goes back to giving the customer what they need and not necessarily what we think is right. The branding, as it carries through, I think we all do a good job of carrying our branding through, but the customer doesn't really care if your brand's on the bottle. The customer cares that you are what your brand is, and you've got to act and become your brand. It's always easy to go back to Disney. When you look at Disney World or Disneyland, their training is that when you step out from the back of the house, you are on stage. And as an employee, whether you're a waitress or a waiter or Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck, you are on stage. And our business is one that we are live 24/7. And we have to make sure that our employees are in an environment that they recognize that they are constantly being watched and looked at. And if they're on their mobile phones and talking and chatting and not paying attention, that doesn't do any good. So you've got to create an environment where people know what the brand stands for, and you carry that through. But to me, branding is more about the design than it is about a logo on a bottle. It's about taking a concept, a logo, and building that in so that that carries through to the metalwork and into the design. So there is a concept. This comes from a Sino-Portuguese story that's part of the Phuket story. And that weaves very thickly through, which we believe is important for each location. It's not just about being Cambodian or just about being Thai, but it's about what's the real story. Do we want to talk about the tin mines? Do we want to talk about other things that are important in that market that we're in? As we carry through, again, it's common, and I think we need to try to avoid stuff like this. I don't think that's really what customers want. Sometimes owners think, oh, that's what everybody else does, so we want to be like that. But is that really part of the experience? I want a great cup of coffee. I really don't care whose name's on the cup. This is restaurants, and I think in the restaurant branding, hotel brands get the room product right, by and large, really do a good job on rooms. When it comes to the restaurants, if the restaurant you're building doesn't work for the local market, then you shouldn't be building it. If you think that you're building that restaurant for your guest, you're sadly mistaken, because your guests are going someplace else for lunch and dinner. They're going to stay for breakfast because it's easy. But if your concept in your hotel doesn't work for the local people, don't bother. Build breakfast and forget everything else. But if you can create a concept, in Phuket, this hotel called Kachu Mining Company, based after tin mining, the staff is having a great time, and our lunch and dinner is 90% local people. And we get some hotel guests, but people want to be off on restaurants at Patong and other locations. But we got it right for the local people. And I think you got to ask yourself when you get to restaurants, if the local people aren't willing to come in, what have we done wrong? Is it design? Is it pricing? Is it service? But you've got to look at that and really think about the whole branding exercise and figure out how can you get local people in. When we talk about branding, I want to talk a little bit about limited services that are integrated. Our Glow brand is 3-star plus 4-star. And with that, with limited services, the key here is that there's a shopping mall that's 6 stories tall. So we're integrated with a very successful shopping mall that has a main entrance, and the hotel sits on top of the mall. They were able to lease out the entire retail section and fundamentally pay for the hotel. So we had no financial pressure the day we opened the hotel because of the integrated services. The retail fundamentally paid for the hotel. Integration, I think, is critical. The cycles, we've seen in Thailand specifically some pretty severe cycles. We have political disruptions and we have economic disruptions, and it seems to be a pretty regular thing in Thailand. But with this kind of integration, this specific hotel has been open for 7-8 years, and we have never had more than a 1 or 2 point in occupancy swing in any downturn. We pretty much have seen constant growth over 7 or 8 years. And it's not that I'm a genius, it's that we're consistent. And we're part of a facility that really works. And people come for shopping, people come for the hotel because of the shopping location, and it really carries through. So this integration with hotels, I think, is critical. From a design standpoint, it's not complicated, but it makes it a lot more difficult. Where do you bring the guest in? Where do you take the garbage out? How do you get things in and out is really complicated, and that often gets missed. So getting an operator involved early on, designers sometimes don't like that because we make changes. But I can tell you most of the changes we make are going to make sense for the long term. What makes sense is like the project I told you about earlier, where we do a proper design brief that's already got market research and study, so then we can go to the designer, they can draw the first time and get it pretty well right. The problem is when the designer draws and spends months working on a concept, and we come in and start changing things, everybody gets a little territorial. And that's not fun. It's not good. We shouldn't have to work that hard. But it's a matter of getting that team together and getting that right. But the whole idea here of integrated services is really critical. For our Glow brand, we are doing this in more locations, and it really is quite successful, at that limited service level. We're going to talk a little more in the next session as well about the condotel environment. Condotels are all over the world, and in the next session we'll talk about that a little bit more, about some of the pitfalls, so I won't dwell on that right now. But what I can tell you is, when we look at this facility here is in the Toronto. You can see the split right here. So this is the hotel, and then this is the condotel. This is a very narrow lot to see out front with a double-loaded corridor, and every single room faces the sea. So it's amazing design. Normally I run hotels and I've got 50% sea view and 50% mountain view. It costs the same to build a room, and we get 25% less probably on room rate for that mountain view room. So when we get into design, a room is a room, but the view is critical. And when you look at the rate you're going to attract and what your costs are, that really requires some serious consideration. This project integrated is a 250 room hotel, and it is a 702 room condotel. The condotel is known as Senia Bay. We've adopted that name in the Glow concept so that it's Glow Senia Bay. Clear distinction between the hotel and the condotel. And we'll talk more about that in the next session on some of the pitfalls. But I think fundamentally, from a design and from an operator's perspective, this mixed-use facility is really a great opportunity. The problem with most standalone condotels is you end up with somebody managing a facility that's really they're not hoteliers. So you get maybe a real estate company that wants to think that that's a good idea, and they manage that facilities for cheap. And when you pay cheap, you get cheap. And most condos are pretty poorly managed. This condotel, with a hotel anchored in front, I can still charge very low monthly fees on the common area maintenance fee. But then I've got the hotel to support the cooling program and how I fill the hotel up. And that's really critical. I think a tremendous opportunity for Cambodia and for the rest of Southeast Asia when I look at this integration of condos and hotels. But if you've got a hotel that's part of the base, you can do considerably better than just taking a condotel and trying to get somebody to manage it. That's tough. It's not easy. The consistency in what's important. In my Glow brand, I have 5 pillars that are important. And I know I'm going to provide a 5-star bed. I know I'm going to provide a 5-star shower. I'm going to provide a fitness center. I'm going to provide a great breakfast. And I'm going to provide amazing Wi-Fi. I can do that with whatever building you want to give me. If you want to build a short building or a tall building or a fat building, I don't care. And if you want it to be green or pink or white, I don't care. But those 5 pillars for my brand are not going to change. If we can't do those 5 things well, it's not going to be a Glow. So I think it's important that we look at what works locally for design, for international, for local standards, what's going to work in Cambodia, but then let's apply the international standards of what we know works. We're going to bring customers from the UK, we're going to bring customers from Korea, we're going to bring customers from America and Australia, and it's important that we give them a product they're going to be happy with, but it's got to be focused on the experience. Transparency is becoming more and more important. And I think as a management company, we want to make sure that you as an owner can see everything. If I've got to hide something from you, something is wrong. I want to make sure that you give me the authority to run the hotel. You give me the accounting authorities of what I can spend. You're going to approve the budget. I'm going to work within the budget. If there's a variance from the budget, we're going to have a conversation. But if there is an issue and you want to see what I'm spending for toilet paper, you can go into the accounting system and check that out. And you know what? If you can get a better price for it than I can, I'm happy about that. Because that means we're going to have a higher profitability. And that means you're going to make more money, it means I'm going to make more money. So the transparency in the way we operate and having books, you have to find an operator who you can trust and that you know have the same values. There are different issues in different countries when it comes to government and when it comes to corruption. That's okay, no problem, that's easy. But let's agree on the way we're going to do business and what's on the books, what's off the books, how we're going to do it, let's figure all that out. And let's make sure we run a good, solid business, but it's transparent in the way that the owner and the operator work together. Teamwork is critical. And as an operator, all I ask with owners is that we're on the same team. It's not the owner or the operator against the employees. It's how do we all get on the same team? If we're going different directions, it's never going to work. So let's understand what's really important. I talked earlier about the three things that are important in branding and in services. You know, the golden triangle or the holy trinity of what's important in the hotel business. If you take one of those factors, if you've only got great design, you're going to sound like the tuba player, and it's not very exciting. But if you get the design right, if you get the services right, if you get the guest experience right, and you get the right branding, then you're going to have this gorgeous symphony. And it's going to sound good, it's going to feel good, and everybody's going to be happy. I want to close today with a thought. Often, my experience in the last 21 years is that we see something and we think, oh, that's what my friend did, so that's what I should do. Sometimes that's a good idea. A lot of the times it's not a good idea. And I think I want to close today with probably one of my favorite quotes that hardly a day goes by. But the idea of doing what's been done before and expecting a different result is not going to happen. My challenge to you today is to think outside the box. Identify what's going to be right for you as an investment. But if you're not focused on the guest experience, you're missing the boat. So focus on the guest experience. Get the right designers, get the right operators, be open, work together, be transparent, and you're going to have a successful business. I've never had a hotel in Asia that didn't make money in good times and bad. But what I always tell people is I'm not any smarter than Chris. In fact, I'm probably a lot dumber than Chris because I don't know how to start my own business. But I work very hard, and our team works very hard. And I think who's going to win the day is the guy who's working 24/7. Now that doesn't give me much of a life, but I love this business. And I hope to be able to share that with you. I look forward to talking to some of you over cocktails tonight. And I really am glad to be here. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Any questions?